very good day to everyone. Well, today my friends and I are going to be presenting on the role of women in the civilization building. Well, first and foremost, I'm going to be taking over and explaining to you the definition or the meaning of the word civilization. Well, civilization is a complex human society usually made up of different cities with certain characteristics of cultural and technological development. In many parts of the world, early civilization formed when people began coming together in the urban settlement. Defining what civilization actually is and what societies fall under designated is hotly contested argument, even among the anthropologists today. So the word civilization, actually, to what extent I have read, relates to the Latin word which is civitas or city. So this is why the most basic definition of the word civilization is a society which is made up of cities. Still, most anthropologists until today agree on the same criteria, agree that there are some criteria to define a society in a civilization. First and foremost, civilization have some kind of urban settlement and not nomadic. With the support from the other people living in the settlement, labor is divided into specific jobs, which is called the division of labor. So not everybody focus on growing their own food, So from the specialization comes the class structure and the government, which are the most crucial aspect of a civilization. Another criteria for civilization is the surplus of food, which comes from having tools to aid in the growing crops. Writing, creating, artwork and monuments, and the development of science and technology are all the aspects of civilization. However, there are many societies that scholars consider civilization do not meet all the criteria that I have stated before. For example, we have the Incan Empire, which was a very large civilization with a government and also a social hierarchy. However, it left behind the wealth of art and highly developed architecture, but no written language. This is why the concept of civilization is hard to define. However, it is still a helpful framework with which it is to view how humans come together from a society. So basically, what I'm trying to tell here is that the meaning of the word civilization is different, and until today there is no permanent meaning to it. There is no permanent definition to it. However, what has been adapted from early until today, the only definition is that the most basic definition of the word civilization is a society of humans in a society. No, a society of humans in a city. Well, now I'm going to pass to my friend to continue. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Salsabilla and I will be presenting on the factors and the 4th main idea. There are 5 factors that influence civilization. The first is the population in the country. Second is the food security, in which the places the people reside in are suitable for growing foods and have clean sources of water. Next is a well-organized government as the head of the country in managing the people, catering for their needs and providing security. Religious unity is another factor in building civilization. As we learn in history, religion is one of the significant aspects in the administration of the earlier civilizations. Lastly, the people's welfare is attended to by the leaders to protect the people's needs, safety, and also health.
Next, I'm going to be explaining to you about the role of women in the medical field. In one capacity or another, women have always been regularly involved in the medical practice throughout Islamic history. Starting from the time of the Prophet itself, there are many examples emerge of Muslim women making significant contributions to the public health care. For example, 19 women were cited in the Islamic biographical collection or the Sirah books as having participated in battles during the time of the Prophet, mostly as water bearers and also nurses treating the sick and the wounded. In the latter context, one of the names that was worth mentioning was the name of Rufaidah binti Sa'ad. So Rufaidah binti Sa'ad, she was the daughter of Rufaidah binti Sa'ad from the Bani Aslam tribe of the Khazraj tribal federation in Medina. She was among the first people in Medina to accept Islam, and Rufaida received the medical training and knowledge from her father Sa'ad, who was a physician. Not very late after that, she became a professional nurse capable of treating the sick and wounded on her own. So in the peacetime, Rufaida would treat all the ill in a tent that was set up outside the Prophet's mosque. So during the time of the war, she would lead the groups of volunteer nurses into the battlefields where they would treat the casualties. So together with her team, she participated in many of the battles. For example, in the Battle of Badr, Uhud, Khandaq, and Khaybar. So indeed, the Prophet used to direct his men to carry any casualties to the fighter's tent. So at the Battle of Khandaq, for instance, he instructed that Sa'ad bin Ma'ad, who had been injured in the battle, to move to her tent. So there, Rufaida nursed him, carefully removing the arrow from the forearm and achieving hemostasis. So, as cited in the Sirah, the Prophet visited Sa'ad in the tent several times a day, and it is also narrated that when the Prophet's army was getting ready to go to the Battle of Khaybar, Rufaida and her volunteer nurses went to the Prophet and asked the permission to go. To go with them to the war. But Rufaida did not confine her nursing just clinical situations and battlefields. She also went to the community where she tried her best to solve all the social problems which lead to diseases and stuff. And in that context, she would be considered both a public healthcare nurse, and also a social worker. So, biographical sources describe that Rufaida as a woman possessing many of the ideal qualities of a nurse, which is compassion, empathy, good leadership, and the ability to pass clinical knowledge on to others. Another female companion, Al-Shifa Binti Abdullah, is also worthy of mention. So originally she named Laila, and her nickname Al-Shifa, the healing, was given to her in recognition of her abilities as a nurse. So she was very well educated and extremely intelligent woman. In particular, she became well known for developing a preventative treatment against ant bites. So preservation of public health care is highly recommended in Islam and considered a key responsibility of the government. Although individuals are responsible for maintaining their spiritual, mental, and bodily well-being, governments are responsible for providing public well-being, including the preservation of health. As such, from as early as the 18th century, Muslim rulers began building mobile and permanent hospitals called the Bimaristan in various parts of the Muslim world. So this provided healthcare for the public, especially for the poor and also the needy. So by the 12th and 13th century, these hospitals, especially in the Greater Syria and Egypt, had reached such high levels of performance that travelers and historians deemed them to be one of the main achievements of the Islamic civilization. And that is why it can be said that one of the roles that has been significantly and perfectly done by the women in the civilization building was in the field of medical, in which these two women can be the best examples to show that since the early ages itself, before civilization ever came, Muslims had already started involving the women in the civilization building. Well, now I will pass to my friend to continue to another role of women in the Islamic civilization building. Thank you.
Okay, so next we go to main idea 2, the participation of women in various economic fields. So this is where the inclusion of women in economic planning or sector and the gender equality in workplace between men and women are improved. It is also about to empower women to increase their financial autonomy, and they can also expose themselves to the industrial sectors and contribute to the national production of the country. So, the participation of women in various fields is measured by the level of education. The greater the number of educated, well-informed and skilled women in the society, the greater the community's capacity will be. For example, The famous career or job that are dominated by women are teachers, clerks, dental assistants, nurses, and entrepreneurs. So nowadays, it can be seen that a woman dominate care occupation as they are created with caring and gentle nature. So the participation of women in economic fields increases the goods and services produced by a country during a particular period, which is the national production. It is also helped to improve living standards and make the society a better place. And it is also advanced the human society and help in achieving the highest state of development, which leads to civilization.
Assalamualaikum, I am Izzah and I will explain the third point, which is women who also a mother play a big role in child development. Firstly, because of the maternal bonding between a mother and a child. Maternal bonding is the attachment of mothers rapidly formed with their infants after birth. It is the development of the first social tie between a child and mother that can increase the response and sensitivity to the child's need, as well as bolstering the quality of the mother-baby relationship. Any disruption in the process of bonding in early childhood can cause an emotional distress and personality disturbance of the child. It may also result in a condition called attachment disorder. The effect of not having this bond is it can cause a problem with their behavior and emotions that can carry on through childhood and into their adult life. This shows how important for a mother to spend most of the time with children, especially at early age, because she owns the need of the child that only mother can fulfill. Secondly, women as a primary caretaker and the first educator. Mother spends most of the time with their children, therefore she is also the one who teach them about the basic home-based learning, which can sharpen their skills and talent at an early age. As examples such as cooking, sewing, and planting. This basic teaching can also help them to develop soft skills such as emotional intelligence, communication skills, and leadership. Hence, by having this kind of soft skills, the children are able to determine which one is good and which one is bad. This can help them to make a good decision in decision making even at an early age. Also, parents need to discipline their child by teaching them the responsible and behavior and self-control. The child is able to learn about consequences and take responsibility for their own action. The ultimate aim is to encourage the child to learn to manage both of their feelings and behavior. Thirdly, mother as a nurturer. Children at the early age tend to copy the behavior and emotion of their parents. Hence, the parents' behavior and emotion with the family members affect the child's development and mental health. A mother nurturing a positive self-esteem or positive feelings of their children can help them to discover their own abilities. They will learn to love themselves and accept any of their strengths and weaknesses. Therefore, it is a mother's role to raise and nourish their child with love, care, and full support, as well as giving full attention and interact with them effectively. Mother as an emotional anchor of their children. A mother owns a caring and conciliatory qualities. They have an instinct of knowing their child very well, such as being able to read the child's expression and body language, or even know if there is something wrong with their child. That is why they are a better listener, because they can connect their emotions deeply with their children. Children are also most likely more comfortable to share their problems or thoughts with their family, especially the mother. It will give an emotional security to the children as they can feel more safe and loved with the one that they are closest to. This point proves that a mother and her child have the strongest bond between any other relationship. Next, the love and caring of a mother can be seen through the story of Siti Hajjah and his son, Prophet Ismail. They had been left alone in an empty desert. No human or even the source of water was there. Even so, she believed that Allah had instructed Prophet Ibrahim to do so and trusted in Allah's plan. Siti Hajjah started to look for help by running between Safa and Marwa mountains 7 times, expecting to look for somebody. She did not lose hope and was convinced that Allah would send her help until she heard a voice at Marwa and saw the flow of water where Zamzam exists today coming out. The lesson learned of the story at first is about a sacrifice of a mother. Siti Hajar do not hesitate to run between the two mountains to look for help at an empty desert. Second, love of the mother to his son. Siti Hajar loved to his son. She could not bear looking at his son Prophet Ismail feeling thirsty. Third, have a strong faith in Allah's plan and put an effort. Siti Hajar believed that Allah will not neglect His creation and willing to surrender herself to Allah's plan. She did not lose hope that Allah will send her a help. However, she did not limit herself to only making dua, but also make an effort to help herself by running between the two mountains to search for a sign of life.
The third main idea of the role of women in civilizational building is the woman's involvement in humanitarian work across the world. As day goes by, more and more conflicts and disasters arise, increasing the numbers of populations affected by them. Humanitarian aid workers play a significant role during this time of crisis, especially the involvement of female volunteers. Understanding and responding to the diverse needs of conflict-affected populations has grown increasingly crucial, and women's involvement and contribution within the conflict and humanitarian help domain has become increasingly important. According to research conducted by the Cooperative for Assistance and Relief Everywhere Care International on women working in the humanitarian sector, women may be better at identifying the needs and realities of different groups affected by crisis. Women play a central role in the survival and resilience of families in their communities during vulnerable times. When crises or disasters happen, people's lives are greatly affected by the injuries, deaths, and destructions around them, especially the children and women. Therefore, humanitarian aid workers, especially the female, have these maternal instincts that play a part in comforting and giving the support needed by those families, both physically and emotionally, even more to the children. Caring for the needs of these families is in the conflict-affected community becomes the primary objective to ensure all these families' safety and comfort during their vulnerable times. Thus, having the women's participation in the decision-making regarding the humanitarian aids or any other forms of assistance, including both physical and emotional support, and also protection, are important in improving the efforts in humanitarian action. Next, the acknowledgement of women's position and huge contribution in handling humanitarian crises and conflicts. The increasing number of female humanitarian figures have proved that women play a very active role in the field of humanitarian works. Awarding these figures accordingly for their contribution is a must to give them the acknowledgement they deserve after volunteering in conflict-affected places. This will motivate them to increase their effort in handling and organizing more humanitarian actions for the people affected, especially the women and children. Besides, this field needs to recognize the fact that there are more women and girls out there who are willing to participate and contribute their effort in response to crises and disasters. Therefore, more opportunities should be given to them in the management of the work of humanitarian action. However, despite the women's positive contribution and participation in humanitarian action, there are existing barriers that hinder women's leadership in this field, which includes patriarchal attitudes that restrict women's ambitions to become widely involved in several conflicted regions. These patriarchal socio-cultural values and gender norms have limited women's active involvement in organizing and handling more humanitarian crises. It leads to gender discrimination in the field of humanitarian action, where this woman's effort to help those affected families, especially the children and mothers, were often ignored. Therefore, more awareness needs to be spread on changing the mindsets that the women's voices do have the effect in the humanitarian field of work.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Irdina Binti Zainudin, and I will be talking about two different topics for this presentation, which are women involvement in scientific discoveries, and great thinkers among women in Islamic civilization. Okay, for the first part, which is women involvement in scientific discoveries, we will talking about firstly Marie Curie. Marie Curie, or also known as Maria Sklodowska, is a Polish-born French physicist that is known for the discovery of new radioactive elements such as polonium and radium. She was born on November 7, 1867 at Warsaw, Poland, and died on July 4, 1934 near Salanches, France. She, along with her husband Pierre Curie and fellow colleague Henri Becquerel, they were awarded the Nobel Prize for Physics on 1903. On 1911, she also won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry. Marie Curie is not only the first woman to win the award, but she also the first woman to receive the honor in two different fields. Next, we'll be talking about Chen Wu. Chen Wu is an American physicist of Chinese ancestry who provided the first experimental proof that the principle of parity conservation does not apply in weak subatomic interactions. She is also one of the major contributors to the Manhattan Project, where she assisted in the development of a gaseous diffusion process for separating uranium metal in U-235 and U-238 isotopes. In 1975, Wu received the National Medal of Science and also served as American Physical Society in the same year. She was born on May 29, 1912 in Liuzhi, Jiangsu Province, China, before she boarded on a ship to the United States in 1936. She died on February 16, 1997 at New York, United States. Last but not least, we will also be talking about Rufaida binti Sa'ad. Rufaida binti Sa'ad of the Bani Asam tribe of Madinah Khazraj Tribal Confederation was the first Muslim nurse, having learned her medical skills and knowledge from her physician father Sa'ad al-Aslami. She quickly advanced to the level of professional nurse capable of treating the ill and injured on her own. During the day, Rufaida would cure the sick in a tent outside of Prophet's Mosque. Rufaida used her professional talents and medical knowledge to create the first documented mobile care capable of meeting the community's medical requirements. Contrary to popular belief, Rufaida binti Sa'ad was actually the first nurse ever recorded instead of Florence Nightingale. Before Nightingale, she was also the first person to found a nursing school. Due to her prestige, an award has been named in her honor, like the Rufaida Al-Aslamiyah Prize in Nursing by the University of Bahrain in collaboration with the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, RCSI, and a building of the Aga Khan University in Pakistan, which is also named under her. She was born on 920 Masih, although it is unclear when she died. Next, we will dive into the topic of great thinkers among women in Islamic civilization. First of all, we will be talking about Aisyah binti Abu Bakar. Aisyah binti Abu Bakar is the adored wife of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. She was an instrumental force in the good development and knowledge of Islam. She passed on a vast lot of knowledge about Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. It is today regarded as Islam's central authority on issues concerning the status of women. She also had transmitted 5,965 hadiths for the duration of her life. Modern Muslim feminists see Aisyah as embodying an early Islamic idealization of women as social and legal equals to males, value for the contributions in both the private and public realms. She was born in 614 Masihi at Mecca, but she died on July 678 Masihi at Medina. Next, we'll be talking about Amrah binti Abdul Rahman. Amrah binti Abdul Rahman is Aisyah binti Abu Bakar's secretary and pupil. Amrah became an authoritative voice on hadith with her considerable knowledge, usually overturning the judgment of male scholars and later becoming an influential judge. For example, in an event when the judge of Medina ruled for a Christian thief from Syria to have his hands severed, Amrah eventually overturned the decision, considering he had stolen something valued less than 1 dinar. The judge adhered to her decision without question. Even the reign of Umayyad Caliph Umar ibn Abdul al-Aziz, a great scholar himself, stated that he knew of no one else was more educated in the hadith of Aisyah than Amrah. She died in the year 98 Hijrah. Last but not least, we will be talking about Sutaita al-Muhammali. Sutaita al-Muhammali from Baghdad is a famous mathematician during medieval Islamic era. she excelled in mathematics, proving adept at Hisab, arithmetic, and Fara'id, successful calculation, and devising solution to equations long quoted by other mathematicians. She did not only excel in mathematics, but she also performed exceptionally well in several other disciplines such as Arabic literature, hadith, and jurisprudence. Due to her expertise in numerous fields, she was regularly consulted for her legal and mathematical insights, and she took hand in inherited difficulties, sophisticated knowledge of the era's most famous area, which is algebra. She died in the year 377 Hijrah or 907 Masihi. And that's all from me. Thank you. Now I will move to the next presenter.
Okay, so next we go to Islamic perspective. First, a woman as a mother. Allah has placed the care of a mother as a primary responsibility of her children. So based on hadith from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu reported that the person said, Allah Messenger, who amongst the people is most deserving of my good treatment? He said, your mother, again your mother, again your mother, then your father, then your nearest relative according to the order of nearness. Sahih Muslim 2548. So from this hadith, it highlighted that we should prioritize and put our mother first before others and treat them nicely. Second, woman as a wife. The Quran recommends that wife be obedient and adaptable to their husband. Wife should also keep the secrets of their husbands and protect their honor and integrity. So based on Surah An-Nisa verse 34, men are in charge of women by right of what Allah has given order over the other and what they spend for maintenance from their wealth. So righteous women are devoted to obedience, guarding in their husband's absence what Allah would have them guard. But those wives from whom you fear arrogance, first advise them, then if they persist, forsake them in bed, and finally strike them lightly. But if they obey you once more, seek no means against them. Indeed, Allah is ever exalted and great. So from this verse, it gives a guidance for the men if their wife disobey them by first advice, then if they disobey again and then forsake them in bed and finally strike them lightly. So next is women as political figures. So some women in Muslim society have been prominent political actors. Female relatives of the Prophet Muhammad were particularly important in the early Muslim community. Other women also came to power through fathers or husbands. So this is some of the example of women as a political figure. So first is Aisyah, which is Muhammad's favorite wife, wielded considerable political power, and even she led an army and fought in the Battle of Kemah. Next is Razia, who was a Muslim woman ruler of 13th century India. Amina was the 16th century queen of Zaria, Nigeria. And Huda Sha'rawi, who became famous for removing her face veil, also founded a women's political party and worked for Egyptian independence from Britain in the first half of 20th century.
To conclude, women that are covering half of the population of the entire world play a significant role in promoting peace, protection, and well-being in a building civilization. In terms of decision-making, they play an essential part in implementing and inspiring progress on human rights, justice, the unity of nation, and economic recovery. Consequently, women are positioned as a person who must be strong, emotionally capable, and independent as they need to cope with the inevitable stress from a multitude of roles. Therefore, it is important for everyone to start to normalize an equal opportunity for women instead of stereotyping their functions and role in the society for the sake of the civilization development.